Hi, my name is Jay Sugarman, and I want to welcome you to Museum Open House. This ongoing series features and highlights many of the outstanding museums and other cultural institutions. The main purpose of most programs is to inform viewers about current and upcoming exhibits, various programs, resources, and other opportunities that are available for the general public. Today via Zoom, we're fortunate to have as our guest Tess Lukey. Tess serves as the Associate Curator of Native American Art at the Trustees of Reservations, the nation's first and state's largest land conservation nonprofit. She's here today to inform us about three extremely informative and engaging exhibitions she's recently curated at the Fruitlands Museum that provide opportunities for Native communities to share their own stories. During the program, we'll hear why and how the exhibitions came about. We'll go on a behind-the-scenes tour and in the process come to better understand and appreciate the objects, artwork, and the Native peoples from which they came. In addition, we'll hear about the museum's revised mission of presenting the Native American collection through an Indigenous perspective and framework. Let's start by meeting Tess and then finding out all about these outstanding new exhibitions at the Fruitlands Museum. Welcome, Tess. So delighted you're able to be here.
Hi, Jay. Thanks. It's great to have you. It's great to be here.
I had the wonderful opportunity about a week ago to visit the Fruitlands Museum. Always enjoy getting out to that area. So gorgeous in addition to the museum. And came away learning so much from the three exhibitions. And in addition, I think because of the way you've conceptualized and curated them, I just got so much more than I would have through another method. So eager to hear about that important process. But before we jump to that and have you inform viewers about the exhibitions, I think it would be of interest just to briefly hear maybe a little bit more about your background, professional interest, and what your current position entails, please.
Absolutely. I want to first say Waniki Sak, good day. Natasawis Tess Lukey, Nu Thomas Aquanahanat. My name is Tess Lukey. I am a Quinawampanoag. That was in the Quinawampanoag language. I am, as you said, the Associate Curator of Native American Art for the Trustees of Reservations. I'm based both at Fruitlands Museum and Cordova Sculpture Park and Museum, also another trustee's property. Little bit about my background. I was born and raised here in Massachusetts, in Central Mass, in Westboro. I had the really fortunate opportunity to grow up in a very big arts community. And so it's no surprise that I ended up going on to art school, to Mass Art in Boston. And I got my undergraduate degree in ceramics and art history. And at that point, we were at a time when artists were struggling, as always, but particularly. And I thought about what I wanted to do with the future. I thought about my own tribal community. I thought about representation. I thought about the places that I saw myself, museums, places that I found and sought out as places to learn and to engage. And if you know anything about me, you know I'm a history nerd. So museums were kind of an obvious place for me to end up working. And so I went on and got my master's degree at the University of New Mexico in Native American art history and Mayan art history. Had the really fortunate opportunities also there to learn from some incredible scholars. I came from there to work at a couple institutions in Boston, including the Museum of Fine Arts. I got to curate a couple shows there. Took a brief stint working for Living History Museum, Old Sturbridge Village out in Sturbridge, Massachusetts. Another really wonderful place, I think, same kind of level that Fruitlands has sometimes. And then ultimately ended up where I am now as the curator for the trustees. My job here is pretty, let's just say it changes every day, and in a really wonderful way. It's an interesting position to be working as an art-based curator for a land conservation organization. A lot of people, I'm sure, are a little confused by that, but we have a handful of museums and historic homes, as well as actual landscapes and properties that I get to work across. Um, Here at the Trustees, my job is based in exhibitions and research, but I also do things like consult with community members and build relationships across our
Mhm.
properties and work towards better visibility in on our landscapes for tribal communities here based in New England. So I kind of dabble in a lot, and I get to do a different thing each day, and um, it is an absolute pleasure and a privilege to be able to do that.
Fabulous, fabulous. Well, there's lots more to find out about the trustees, and we'll have that contact information in the credits. But moving on, why and how did these new exhibitions come about? I mean, it's a whole paradigm shift that you've been involved with.
I mean, it was definitely something that the trustees was interested in doing. Uh, there were definitely there was interest in building relationships with tribal communities, being the largest landowner in the United in Massachusetts. It only makes sense that we're building those relationships better as an organization. And so I came in at a time when they were seeking representation, they were seeking kind of an inroad. They were seeking on building better relationships and also showing that in our spaces and on our landscapes. And I have the ability to do both in the work that I do, both as a tribal community member, but as a community member here in New England, um, both in the art field and the museum world and various other spaces. I'm a gardener as well. So, I know the landscape well, I know the land well. And so I came in and said, we need to redo this. We looked at the spaces. I saw what was there. I saw what had been done previously, and I said it's not enough. We're at a time where it's really important that Native tribal community members are telling their own stories, and we don't have people telling those stories for them. Especially in institutions like museums where a lot of cultural knowledge is shared and where information is disseminated in a way that gives it authority. And so when tribal communities are represented in these spaces and they're telling their own stories, we're not perpetuating old stereotypes. In fact, we're changing that and we're putting tribal voices and perspectives forward,
Mhm.
and as the dominant narrative, as the people telling that story rather than someone else telling it for us. And so the
Well,
trustees was at that moment.
well, let's move on and hear about the first exhibition we want to talk about and see how you've incorporated that in across boundaries, across barriers. Would you please share the conceptualization and before we dive in with some wonderful images, just how things are laid out, please?
Of course. So, among several Eastern Woodlands communities, it's known that there are four cardinal directions. More than four cardinal directions, I'm sorry. Rather, there are seven. And so these directions make up the sacred hoop, which is known also as the medicine wheel. And this symbol is venerable among several Indigenous peoples, and it signifies the intersection of Earth's boundaries and all the knowledge that is contained within the universe. And so from these directions and these places, our people emerged onto Turtle Island, which is known as the continental United States. However, the medicine wheel not only refers to the directions, but also to concepts that are tied to the personal body, to the seasons, to colors and times of day, among many other things. And the medicine wheel and the seven directions are intended to inform one's everyday life. And so, using this framework of the medicine wheel to move beyond our traditional boundaries of place and time, across boundaries, across barriers, presents a diverse collection of Native American art and belongings from the perspectives of modern nations, while also honoring our histories.
Well, let's dive right in. And this nice wide shot shows us several of the different areas, sort of different directions, themes that we're trying to get at. Could you share first, like flowing connections? That's associated with the South, I believe, and what that signifies and how's that reflected in some of the items that are in the area?
Absolutely. So, as with many other cultures, the four elements play a complex role in how we interact with our world. And so, the four elements are air, earth, fire, and water. And so, in the southern direction, we honor the element of water, which is a source of nurturing and growth, of sustenance and dependence. It's an integral part here of life on the coast. It's not just a resource, but it's something that needs to be cared for. So the works in this section are all connected to water, either through their function or their material nature or through the imagery on their surfaces. So you'll see everything from beautiful oyas, which are water jars from the Southwest, to a Yokut's basket from California, to walrus ivory cribbage boards. Really interesting and diverse amount of works and materials
So
and communities represented as well.
wonderful, wonderful. And in the background there, we see another area we want to hear about, the embodied homelands, which is the one that's in addition to the four directions, and sort of stands in the center.
Yeah, so as I said, the medicine wheel it's not just the four cardinal directions, it also includes up, down, and center. And because this space is only so large, it couldn't fit all seven directions. So I chose the four cardinal directions that everyone is familiar with and center, because for me, my center is here in New England. It's in this
Mm,
woodlands community. It's in the East. And so at the heart of the medicine wheel is the center of where all of the knowledge in the universe is. It is the place of our creator. It is the place where our medicine wheel comes into balance. And so for local Indigenous communities here, our center is New England. In the Wampanoag language, we have no word for art. And so the language of my people doesn't separate art from life.
mm,
And so artworks in this section are from, and this is the only one that is geographically oriented, by the way, are from the homelands of tribal communities up here from the Northeast, and they represent the earth, the skies, and the waters of this place. And so you'll see everything from a beautiful vase made from the Aquinnah Cliffs, to modern and contemporary works by current tribal members like Elizabeth James Perry. Um, you'll also see things like basketry, and an incredible octopus bag. So all of it really, like I said, in the other section, it ranges a bunch of communities and materials and techniques, and times and places.
wonderful. And we want to hear this one other section here, cycles of renewal.
Absolutely. Cycles of Renewal is focused on what would be the Western portion of the medicine wheel. And because the medicine wheel is a guiding framework for all stages of our lives, from birth to adulthood to becoming an elder and eventually an ancient after our passing, this is a place where we kind of meet fulfillment in life and where, as humans, we find our meaning and our place. And so our identities are reflected in how we present ourselves to the world, and this can be through artistic means or more simply through how we adorn ourselves. And so the works in this section represent the different stages of our lives and how each aspect of ourselves is reflected in our appearance. So you'll see works that are based in clothing. So there's a vest or a belt or a pair of moccasins. But there are also representations of people and our identities, like that beautiful photograph in the back by
Mm,
Kim Weston, or this incredible Oya that's also in the section by Elizabeth and Marcellus Medina from the Southwest. Um, Really, really incredible pieces. This one is one of my favorites that's actually on the screen right now.
mm,
This piece in particular, I opened the box to see it the very first time, and it was a real aha moment, not just because of its beauty, but because of its history. So this piece, when I opened the box, had a little handwritten note that was on it. And it said, belt formerly owned by Charles Eastman, acquired in collaboration with the Harvard Peabody. And I didn't know, I knew the name of this person, but it didn't occur to me like really who this person was. Charles Eastman was an incredibly famed physician. He was of Santi Dakota, English and French ancestry. and he was the first Native American to be certified in Western medicine. So it
Hmm.
has this incredible history tied to it, not only in its work, but in who owned it and what it represents.
Wonderful. And before we move on, I just have to highlight this feature of the exhibition, which I found so enlightening and just exemplifies what I think you're after and your colleagues as far as giving voice to the artist, to the native peoples whose either work is being featured or just reflections about. And love this question that you posed, in this case, to Elizabeth James Perry, whose work you commented on earlier. And just encourage viewers when they make their way there to really take time to reflect on these thoughts that are shared by the artist.
Well, as I said, the works that have been shown in these galleries historically don't go far past the past. They don't move into today. And it was really important to me that we bring the people back into these spaces. It's not just about the art, it's about the people. And when I can give that humanity back to the works, like finding an artist that made the piece, or recognizing that we have a living presence that is still here, and bringing those voices and perspectives into the gallery was really integral to that. So Elizabeth James Perry is actually my cousin. She's an incredible wampum artist. Definitely check out her work. She's also a recent NEH recipient, and so she's a pretty incredible lady. And to have her voice here talking about our connection to place, and how when you look at an object, you can see that there's a sense of the maker and the bearer, and that kind of shared tribal ancestry that comes from understanding the place and the time and the material. And
You
so
know,
like I said, I invite you to read more of these labels that are all throughout the gallery space.
No, and this type of feature exemplifies what you mentioned in your earlier remarks about there hadn't been enough done with showcasing Native collections, Native work, and this brings their voices up in front. For the sake of time, have to move on. I want to move on to the exhibition just across the hall. A few words about the intent of place of intersection survivance in the American West, please.
Absolutely. So, place of intersection survivance in the American West, for me, was both a way to talk about some really tough history and also honor the legacy of Clara. So, Clara Sears was the one who collected and owned these museums, and objects, and galleries, and collections in the late 1920s, early 1930s. She had a real fascination with the West. No surprise, many people in the 19th and 20th centuries really did. And so the works in this gallery are focused on tackling ideas of manifest destiny and kind of doctrines of discovery, and moving westward and westward expansion, and how artists helped to shape our understanding of what the West was like when it was quote unquote one. In reality, many of these artists did not have any idea of what the West actually looked like. In fact, many of the paintings that you'll see in here um, are kind of fantastic in that way. They're almost exoticizing and in some ways perpetuating the vanishing Indian myth that was embedded in the hearts and minds of collectors and the public throughout the country during that time. And so instead of just showing those kind of stereotypical still lives of what the American West was like when it was one, as I said, the works that are made by Native communities are put next to these
Mm.
still lives of sorts, um, bridging the gap of understanding kind of of what this cultural landscape looked like truly in the 19th and 20th century. So you've got these images that were created by artists that weren't always entirely based in truth, with actual objects that would have been encountered and understood and seen if you had gone westward and encountered Native communities. There's everything from landscape paintings to portraits to beaded artworks, to regalia and basketry.
Tess, one more image we'd like to hear a few words about is this one here. What are we enjoying?
Sure. I actually think this is a incredible image for many reasons, but first and foremost, you really actually get an understanding, I think, of what the point of this part of the exhibition, of this small space is that you're seeing those portraits of people, you're seeing the works made by them, and you're seeing those landscapes that artists were creating for us. On the right-hand side is actually a piece called Old Covered Wagon that was by John White Allen Scott. And so westward expansion in the United States is one of those defining themes of the 19th century. And so following the footsteps of Lewis and Clark, most of the people heading westward did so in search of economic opportunity. And the West served as an emblem of freedom, of promise, of the possibility of independence and upward mobility. And so this was all intensified by that belief in manifest destiny and federally issued Indian removal acts. And so the covered wagon was synonymous with westward expansion. It was appropriate for moving heavy loads over rough terrain, and these vehicles were well suited for what was an unknown environment. And so many artists that were working at the time actually never experienced it, which I think is really funny that this is one of those fantastic images that I was mentioning before. They never witnessed this movement forward, and so likely this artwork was only a creation of John White Allen Scott's imagination.
Mm, fascinating, fascinating. Before we leave this building and move on down to the next building where the third exhibition is, just a few words about the study room that you've included in between these two galleries that enhance the overall mission as well.
Absolutely. I thought it was important that we had a space on campus at Fruitlands that scholars and educators, that school groups, that I could use, that my colleagues could use as a space to learn and engage with the public, but also for visitors to come in and learn and engage more with the objects and the histories of peoples that are represented in our spaces. And so you have the opportunity to sit for a minute and pick out a book and read more and engage more and learn more and make even deeper memories about the things that you're seeing, and in turn, hopefully share that information out and encourage others to come and do the same.
Terrific, terrific. Well, for the sake of time, also want to hear just this reflection, again, getting at the voices that you wanted to bring in to the exhibition, Place of Intersection.
Yeah, like I said before, we included those modern voices in the other exhibition, and I thought it was important that we continued to do so throughout all of these spaces. Again, bring in those modern nations and perspectives. This label was written by Will Ridingen, who's Pawnee and Santa Ana. So he's from two tribal communities that are in the kind of Southwest and Midwest, Western area of the United States. And he talks about being a writer and an artist and a curator and a researcher and being an Indigenous person in the arts and culture field and what that has done to change his understanding and his perspective, and how he hopes that this continued work, where museums are now working more collaboratively with Indigenous communities, can help these places bring in more diverse perspectives and accurate information, because it's been absent for too long.
For sure, for sure. Well, the third exhibition, just down the hill a little next door, is a surreal place by Sky Horpinka and Chanupa Hanska Luger, two video presentations. So different medium used here. A few words about including them and what visitors can look forward to.
So fortunately and unfortunately, the public has an understanding of what they think Native art is, and many of that kind of idea, you can see in the galleries that this is not located in. You can see those historic works. You can see the beadwork and the basketry that everyone thinks of when they think of Native art. Well, for me, I wanted to kind of turn that perspective on end and make people think more expansively, and more critically about what they think of as Native art. And so the works that are in here are two video pieces by Skaya Pinka, who's Ho-Chunk and Pachanga Band of Luiseno Indians. And Chinoopa Lugar is Mandan, Hidatsa, Arakara, and Lakota, and from the four affiliated tribes of Fort Berthold. And so this installation features a pair of video-based artworks that reflect on a sense of place. That's really grounded in Indigenous realities and identity, the same way that the exhibitions and the other gallery are as well, really foregrounding what Indigenous futurism looks like,
Mm.
and pushing the boundaries of traditional museum categories to draw out modern narratives. Many of the works by these artists, including the two pieces shown here, which are the Fainting Spells and a piece called We Live, um, touch on the artist's memories of places and spaces. And each kind of navigates a story of personal heritage and historical trauma, and collective healing that's grounded in the land we live and walk on. And so utilizing visuals and sound and sometimes text, these videos really tell stories of kind of liminal spaces between the surreal and the grounded. And through survivance and adaptation and through activism, we can really think about how our collective in changing environment and how through that we can begin to kind of dream of a more Indigenous future. And so I think it's a really interesting juxtaposition against those historic works that are shown in the other galleries
Mm.
and these pieces.
Most definitely, most definitely. In closing, Tess, what's been some of the reaction and feedback you've heard, observed from visitors, from native artists, from perhaps museum professionals to these three current exhibitions?
It's been overwhelming positivity. And it's been, I some of the people that come and visit, sometimes I'll sit in the study room and just listen because they don't know who I am yet. They haven't necessarily seen this program or seen my face maybe. But they're encountering the space and they're learning and they're engaging. The other day I was in there and we have a small little space in that gallery also that's for young audiences to kind of draw on the concepts in the exhibition through things like coloring pages or learning how to weave. Um, and I watched kids do exactly that. They went from the gallery and then they came into the space and they were like, I can do that too. You can learn, you can engage. And those memories, that kind of identity building and memory building is just exactly what I want to see happening. And just a small example of the kind of positivity that's been happening and the feedback I've been getting. Um, Also, our interpreters that spend time in these spaces,
Mhm.
it's been really great to be able to help educate them too, because they're our frontline staff that are helping to tell the stories that are in these spaces to our visitors. And they've been so excited and so impressed by the work that me and my team, I want to give a shout out to my team. They really, truly, without them, this wouldn't have been a reality. And um, even them, they were excited to see a change. And I think that's the big thing. Everyone is excited to see the change and to learn from it. From
Most.
Native community members, I can tell you it's also been overwhelming positivity um, and support and gratitude.
And I'm sure it's had an impact from your colleagues in the museum field as well.
Absolutely. I am a mentor of mine is hoping to get out there soon. In fact, we're hoping to do a program together on our two kind of reinstallations. She did one a couple years ago in the museum that she works for. So more to come on that. Hopefully I'll be able to share that program with you soon. But she was so proud. That's what she said. It was when I got the job, she was actually a reference for me. And what she told my boss was that I was hungry to be able to work in these spaces and make better representation and perspectives known and different perspectives known, and a better place for Native communities. And so I think she still sees that hunger and that drive and that desire when she tells me that she's proud.
Oh, she should be. We all are for you taking your vision and then implementing it so successfully in the three exhibitions. Really, for somebody who's visited a lot of museums over my time, came away so impressed with this reconceptualization, with the authenticity that you've given to the different artists, the different communities that I haven't seen before. So looking forward to future efforts that I know will be just as inviting and enriching. So Tess, unfortunately, we have to wrap it up. In the credits, there'll be some contact information because I know there's related programming to the exhibitions, and people can follow up and perhaps get in touch as well. But for now,
Absolutely.
thanks again and continued success with future endeavors.
Kataptash. Thanks, Jay.
Also want to thank those of you watching for joining and hope you'll be able to tune in